Thank you, Mr. Fontaine. Merci. We will now move to the presentation portion of this evening. Our presenters this evening are Mr. Jim Burpee, Chair of the Board of the AECL, Mr. Fred DeMarker, President and CEO of AECL, Dr. Stephen Bushby, Acting Vice President of Science, Technology and Commercial Oversight, and Ms. Maude Émilie Paget, Director of Communications and Government Reporting. Our first speaker this evening is Jim Burpee. Mr. Burpee joined the board of the AECL in June 2017 and was appointed as chairperson of AECL's Board of Directors in July 2019, bringing with him 4 decades of experience in the electricity industry in Ontario. Mr. Burpee, over to you.
Merci, Rhonda. Bonsoir, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, bienvenue. My name is Jim Burpee. I am the chair of the Board of Directors of AECL. Excuse me. My name is Jim
Burpee, and I am the chair of the board of directors of AECL.
As Rhonda mentioned, we'll go through the presentation and open it up for questions. I'd like to start today by discussing my role as the chair of the board in the role of the board of directors. As is common for many organizations, the board provides oversight and strategic direction to the organization. As chair of the board, I lead a group of diverse, experienced individuals who each bring relevant expertise to the table. I'll expand a little bit more on some of our key priorities, but before I do this, I want to take a few minutes to talk about COVID-19 and the impacts that it has had on our organization. The COVID-19 pandemic continues to present challenges to communities, governments, and organizations. Last year at this time, we were probably all thinking this would be over in 2021, yet we all continued to be impacted by this new reality. For AECL and CNL, this is no different. The pandemic has caused disruption to operations, and we've had to stop, assess, analyze, and adapt so that our work can continue to be conducted safely for the health of employees, the public, and our communities. At the outset of the pandemic, a lot of activities at CNL were put on pause, with some activities being continued to maintain the safety and security of our sites and deliver mission-critical work. Since then, activities have slowly resumed in alignment with public health guidance, and we have been adjusting as the guidance evolves with the pandemic. Our priority has been ensuring the safety of our employees, the security of our sites, and the ongoing protection of the environment. This has had impacts on important projects and activities throughout 2020 and 2021, and Fred will speak in a bit more detail about this. At this meeting last year, I noted the flexibility, innovation, and resilience of both AECL and CNL staff. This continues to be the case as we adapt and evolve to the new normal. Like others in Canada and elsewhere around the world, AECL and CNL employees have risen to the challenge by responding with enthusiasm and leveraging their capabilities to help our organizations adapt and prosper for the benefit of Canadians. Key amongst this is how AECL and CNL employees were able to rapidly refocus their broad scientific and technical expertise to contribute to the fight against COVID-19. Not only did CNL provide countless items of personal protective equipment to local health authorities, but they developed a simple ventilator to address global shortages. They did this by working collaboratively with other Canadian research institutions and manufacturers. And over the last few months, CNL has provided resources to local communities for vaccine clinics. More than the clear benefits to Canadians, including to the local health communities, this effort demonstrates the value and capabilities that reside at CNL. The agility of the laboratories and their ability to mount a response to a global threat is a key tangible benefit of maintaining world-class national laboratories. I'm particularly proud of these accomplishments and of the innovation and creativity of these scientists and experts, as well as their contributions to our communities. Going back to AECL's mandate, we are first and foremost a science organization. The Chalk River Laboratories are Canada's largest science campus and have been leading scientific innovation for almost 70 years. The research done at Chalk River has significant benefit in the lives of Canadians. Chalk River has made significant, internationally recognized contributions to nuclear medicine, nuclear reactor technology, and material science. This includes the development and production of medical isotopes, which are used for the detection and treatment of cancer. These were produced in Chalk River for decades and benefit over 1 billion people around the world. As we will discuss throughout the presentation, the contribution of Chalk River continues to be significant for Canada. The labs are an important part of Canada's science innovation ecosystem, and our activities to clean up and remediate contaminated sites brings long-term value to Canada through environmental stewardship. Our activities take place at various sites across Canada, and Fred will discuss in more detail some of the key activities and priorities across the country. Earlier, I mentioned government priorities, and I want to take a moment to go through a few of them. Diversity takes many forms. At AECL, I'm proud to say that out of 6 independent board members, 3 are women. AECL as an organization has good representation, with more than 40% of women being a part of the workforce. We're also committed to reconciliation. We recognize that as individual Canadians, we have work to do to recognize past wrongs and move forward with Indigenous groups in a meaningful manner that promotes healing. As an organization, we are working hard to achieve this, which includes building relationships with Indigenous groups at our sites across the country. We recognize that this takes time, and we are committed to doing this the right way. Our contribution to sustainability comes in many forms. This includes the role that nuclear energy plays in meeting environmental objectives. Nuclear energy is a reliable source of energy which does not produce greenhouse gases. In the fight against climate change, this is a significant contribution. And it is particularly relevant given the government's objectives of achieving net zero by 2050 and the recently announced 40 to 45% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions below 2005 levels by 2030. Going forward, we are looking at enabling the development of small modular reactors to help meet Canada's target of net zero emissions by 2050. Sustainability also means looking at other clean energy options, such as hydrogen for the transportation sector. As Fred will expand on, we are also committed to looking at the sustainability of our own operations. For example, we have reduced the greenhouse gas emissions at Chalk River site by 30% below 2005 levels by converting the site's powerhouse from bunker fuel to natural gas. We have also been using mass timber as a key material in the new buildings that have been or are being constructed at the Chalk River site. This is a renewable Canadian material which has important environmental benefits, key amongst which is reducing the need for concrete, which we know is an important contributor to GHG emissions. Looking at how AECL operates, most of you have heard about our government-owned, contractor-operated, or GoCO model. Simply put, Canadian Nuclear Laboratories manages and operates our sites across Canada on our behalf. AECL continues to own the sites, assets, and liabilities. This is a model that has been used elsewhere in the world, and we have drawn from international best practices and lessons learned in putting it together. Our GoCO model is adapted to the Canadian environment. The objective is to leverage the expertise of the private sector and to increase rigor and efficiency. It is about bringing the expertise and capabilities of those in the private sector together with the expertise and capabilities already at CNL to pursue and bring best value to Canada. We've asked CNL to build a world-class nuclear science campus. We've asked them to accelerate environmental remediation. I can tell you my personal experience with the benefits of this model. I used to be a customer of AECL prior to the implementation of the GoCO model back when I was a senior executive at Ontario Power Generation. Now what I see is work and services which have been significantly enhanced, same capabilities and expertise, but more rigor and discipline applied in the oversight, which has led to improved performance and increased benefits to Canadians. I want to take a few moments to go over AECL's role as it is a critical piece of the model. AECL's role is to protect Canada's interest. We look after the long-term sustainability of our sites and provide oversight of safety, value, and the environment. We set priorities and direction, and we monitor the results. We do this by having in place a small, expert-based organization. Everyone at AECL is focused on bringing value to Canada and protecting the interests of Canadians over the long term. That objective of bringing value to Canada is reflected in everything that we do. Our vision is to drive nuclear opportunities for Canada. Our efforts in science are about looking at leveraging the expertise and capabilities of our national nuclear laboratories to bring benefits to Canadians. This is about innovation and working collaboratively with other research organizations to make the most of our facilities, capabilities, and assets. I've already mentioned the research on small modular reactors, which would help, which could be the next generation of flexible energy that would help us fight climate change. Innovation also includes research on the next generation of cancer treatments through medical isotopes, as well as research in hydrogen as clean fuel to decarbonize the transportation sector. All of this is very promising and, from AECL's perspective, is bound to keep CNL at the forefront of research and innovation in Canada and internationally for decades. It is also important to recognize our role as stewards of the environment. All of this research in nuclear science has created radioactive materials and waste. AECL recognizes it is our responsibility to safely manage both the lab's legacy and future waste, and to put in place solutions so that we don't leave it to the next generation to address. And as I mentioned previously, it is also our role to do this collaboratively with Indigenous groups in the spirit of reconciliation. With this, I will now pass it over to Fred. Fred joined AECL in February 2021 after being President and CEO of the Candu Owners Group. Fred has been working in the Canadian nuclear industry for more than 40 years, occupying a variety of key technical and senior leadership positions at Ontario Power Generation in support of the design, commissioning, operation, refurbishment of its Candu reactors. Fred brings outstanding expertise and knowledge of the nuclear landscape. We're very fortunate to have Fred lead the organization. Fred?
Merci, Jim, et merci à tous les participants. Bonsoir.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you to all participants. Good evening.
AECL, j'aimerais prendre quelques instants.
Before I discuss the AECL team, I want to take a moment to expand on what Jim noted related to the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. I joined AECL in February 2021 in the middle of the pandemic. Right away, I was impressed by the dedication of AECL and CNL employees. They have and continue to show tremendous flexibility, responsiveness, dedication, and hard work.
Challenged us all personally, but it has also challenged organizations. Maintaining a commitment to safety while resuming operations and being responsive to the evolving nature of the pandemic is not an easy task. I'm proud of the extent to which employees have stepped up, gone above and beyond, and responded to new demands at work and at home. Jim mentioned all of the efforts that were put into contributing to the national effort. These included CNL's amazing support at the local, regional, provincial, and national levels. The pandemic response demonstrated the value of having a strong scientific network and a lab like CNL. Our sites are home to some of Canada's most unique and innovative facilities, laboratories, equipment, and most importantly, expertise. In times like these, everyone has a part to play. I can assure we did our part, and we continue to do our part. This is a good way to introduce the AECL team. Jim talked about AECL's oversight role. Oversight is really about people. We have a small organization, about 45 people, but we have expertise in science and technology, environmental remediation, in decommissioning, in project management and project controls, and in contract management. Our team is focused and engaged. Our role is to look after the interests of Canada over the long term. We set priorities, we establish the what, and CNL is responsible for the how. We establish specific goals and objectives for CNL in order to drive value and innovation for Canada. We carefully monitor CNL's performance. We are cleaning up our sites and enabling nuclear opportunities for Canada, and we work with CNL to make this happen. Looking at our funding, we receive funding from the Government of Canada to deliver our mandate. We have been consistently receiving around $1 billion per year since the restructuring in 2015, with funding this fiscal year totaling more than $1.2 billion. This demonstrates a clear commitment to AECL by the government and the importance of its science and technology and environmental remediation mandates. Of particular note is the large infrastructure investment, $1.2 billion over 10 years for new and renewed science facilities at Chalk River. The Government of Canada has shown a clear commitment to a strong and vibrant lab that will continue to drive innovation into the future. Jim mentioned it up front. AECL is first and foremost a science organization, and our flagship site is the Chalk River Labs. The labs are the birthplace of nuclear research in Canada, and to this day continue to be a thriving innovation center. Part of the value of the labs is the unique expertise and capabilities they bring. And going forward, they will continue to work with other research organizations, both in Canada and internationally. We have limited resources dedicated to research and innovation in Canada, so it is critical that we work in partnership with others to leverage what each brings to the table. The COVID-19 pandemic provided us with an interesting case study in that respect. CNL worked with Triumph and Snow Lab, two other important Canadian research organizations, to help develop and build a simple ventilator. Working with international counterparts, they developed a ventilator that is easy to produce using accessible, off-the-shelf parts. The ventilator was authorized by Health Canada in September of 2020, then fabricated and distributed to the Government of Canada shortly thereafter through partnerships with manufacturers. None of CNL, Triumph, or Snow Lab had worked on such health products before, but they each have expertise in components, engineering design, modeling, procurement, and legal negotiations. And this collection of skills and expertise allowed them to bring this project to fruition in Canada in a very timely manner. They were able to do this quickly and nimbly, reallocating resources and lab space and refocusing priorities. This achievement is but one tangible benefit of maintaining and supporting world-class national labs in Canada. First and foremost, the labs play an important role in support of the Government of Canada. AECL manages the Federal Nuclear Science and Technology Work Plan. We work with 14 federal departments and agencies to identify work and projects that support the federal government's needs and responsibilities. This is important work that is more than just about energy. For example, CNL works with partner agencies to develop novel ways of detecting illicit materials at the border, supporting non-proliferation, counter-terrorism, and threat detection. CNL is also using its expertise in nuclear detection techniques to develop technology to detect other chemicals such as opioids and explosives. Important work continues in collaboration with Health Canada to refine our understanding of the health effects of radiation. This is used, for example, to understand the impacts of radiation on the health of nuclear medicine workers. On the energy side, important work continues in support of Canada's existing CANDU nuclear fleet, which continues to produce 15% of Canada's electricity safely and carbon-free, and is expected to continue to do so for decades to come. AECL and CNL are also looking to the future and working to support private sector efforts to bring small modular reactors to new energy markets in Canada and around the world. Small modular reactors are the next generation of energy technology that could bring clean power to smaller markets and provide low-carbon electricity. In Canada, this could mean new clean energy options for replacing coal, greening mining, and improving energy security for remote communities. The Chalk River Labs are well positioned to help test out and demonstrate new technologies given the lab's experience and R&D capabilities. We also see potential at Whiteshell for other SMR demonstration projects. Canada and CNL have a real opportunity to participate in the development and deployment of this technology. But the time is now, or Canada will be left behind. We believe it's important for Canada to lead. It will give the Canadian government and Canadian businesses the opportunity to build a world-class knowledge base and manufacturing capability around SMRs. CNL has put into place an invitation for application for SMR demonstration projects. Demonstration is the key to both understanding the opportunity as well as to position Canadian businesses and the supply chain to compete internationally as the market develops. CNL's invitation process is helping support the private sector goal of building and demonstrating an SMR on a timescale that is competitive internationally. Currently, there are 4 projects that have passed one or more stages of the invitation process. Having sites that are suitable for demonstration and the capabilities to support technology vendors through R&D capabilities are important assets for Canada. One project led by Global First Power is now in stage 3 of the process and is currently the most advanced SMR project in Canada. Global First Power has already kicked off the licensing and environmental assessment processes with the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. Also on the SMR front, CNL has been working with partners to co-fund collaborative SMR research projects. 5 of these are underway through CNL's Canadian Nuclear Research Initiative. The initiative serves to make available CNL expertise and facilities needed to support SMR vendors at all stages of technology development. The 3rd call for proposals under this innovation was launched just a few weeks ago. I'd like to talk now about targeted alpha therapy. This exciting area of work at Chalk River has to do with the next generation of medical isotopes and a promising new area of research for cancer treatment. Targeted alpha therapies and medical isotopes can target cancer tumors directly and minimize the effects to healthy cells and tissues around it. This builds on the proud history of medical isotope research and production at Chalk River. Actinium-225 is an isotope of keen interest in targeted alpha therapy, in particular for the treatment of prostate cancer. It's also in very short supply. Over the last few years, CNL has developed a generator technology and is now supplying actinium-225 for its own experimentation and to universities and research institutes in Canada to allow them to continue their pre-clinical trials. Advancing the science of targeted alpha therapy and the production capacity for actinium-225 are both high priorities at Chalk River these days because they have significant potential to contribute to the health of Canadians and to continue Chalk River's legacy of supplying key medical isotopes to Canada and the world. Research on clean energy at CNL is not just about nuclear. It's also about hydrogen to clean up the transportation sector, which represents an important contributor to our greenhouse gas emissions. AECL and CNL have a long history of world-class expertise in hydrogen that is born out of the tritium expertise needed to support CANDU reactors. This expertise is now contributing to the national strategy and will be important in achieving results under the strategy. CNL is working to scale up its proprietary hydrogen production process. Also, as part of its Clean Energy Research Park concept, CNL is exploring the potential of pairing a demonstration reactor with a hydrogen production process to showcase a more complete clean energy solution for a community or resource extraction project. So now moving to how we are making all of this happen. Exciting science needs state-of-the-art facilities. I mentioned that we were investing $1.2 billion to renew the science and site-supporting infrastructure at the Chalk River Labs. People who have been to our site know that many of the buildings, some of which are over 50 years old, are showing their age. Our scientists need access to modern facilities in order to deliver the best research possible. In addition, attracting the best minds requires the lab to be transformed into a modern campus-like facility. We also need a site that is efficient. Maintaining hundreds of old buildings is inefficient and expensive. We are focused on transforming the site to one that is more efficient and cost-effective, allowing us to deliver more value to Canada. Part of the revitalization is not only building new buildings, but it is also about taking old ones down. This past year, despite the slowdown due to COVID-19, tremendous progress has been made on key capital projects. The new logistics facility located at the outer gate was constructed using mass timber, demonstrating our commitment to sustainability while acknowledging the history of forestry in the Ottawa Valley. More importantly, it provides a facility that allows for more efficient storage and distribution of goods onto the site with positive implications for security and workflow. Similarly, the support facility is also built using Canadian structural wood. The facility consolidates a number of shops on site, removing duplication and allowing for older buildings to be decommissioned. This building and others were also supported by the government's Greening Construction Through Wood program. It is an excellent example of a multidisciplinary approach across sectors to green government infrastructure and to leverage the kind of multi-pronged approach that will be needed for Canada to achieve its sustainability goals. And I'm proud to say that the support facility and the logistics facility have both been recognized through architectural awards domestically and internationally. Both buildings I just talked about have been completed. 2 others are underway. One of them is the Science Collaboration Centre. This building will serve as a central planning and collaboration space for activities at the Chalk River Labs. It is also built using mass timber as a sustainable building material. We expect it to be completed in the spring of 2023. The other building and the flagship new science facility for the Chalk River Labs is the Advanced Nuclear Materials Research Centre. It will provide modern shielded facilities needed to advance several of AECL's strategic priorities, including SMRs, environmental remediation, and radioisotope work. I will now turn to environmental stewardship and remediation. Over the years, the lab made significant contributions to nuclear science and the health of Canadians. For example, medical isotope research and isotope production has benefited the health of Canadians and others around the world. These activities have also created legacy facilities and waste that are being managed but that will need permanent solutions to protect the environment over the long term. We are committed to addressing our environmental remediation responsibilities now and not leave it to future generations. In fact, AECL's increased focus on environmental stewardship and remediation is yielding real and positive results. Part of what drives the need for an engineered disposal facility is the need to decommission and take down many of the redundant buildings on the Chalk River site that are past their useful life and have increasingly become a safety concern while still standing. Since the beginning of the GoCO contract in 2015, more than 100 such buildings and structures have been taken down at the Chalk River site, and the resultant waste stored awaiting the construction of a disposal facility. This is a significant accomplishment and represents an acceleration from previous plans before the GoCO model. As many of you are aware, we also have areas where soil and groundwater has been impacted by historical operation and past waste storage practices. The areas in light pink that you see on the map represent areas of soil contamination. Benefits were realized, but we believe now is the time to apply modern waste storage and disposal practices across AECL's sites. It's important to recognize that all these areas and facilities are currently being safely managed and monitored, but in some cases, remedial actions are required to enhance the protection of the environment. For example, we have in place localized water treatment systems that minimize impacts to groundwater. This is working, but it's not a modern or sustainable solution. We need to clean up this contaminated land. However, this requires somewhere to put the contaminated material, and that's where the near-surface disposal facility comes in. The objective of the near-surface disposal facility is to allow us to remediate contaminated areas, move low-level radioactive waste from temporary storage areas located at the Chalk River site to a state-of-the-art engineered facility that will isolate the waste and contamination from the environment and allow for ongoing monitoring. Only low-level radioactive waste will go into this facility, waste owned by AECL, as well as very small volumes of waste from Canadian hospitals and universities. It's important to understand that these environmental liabilities are the product of legacy activities that have yielded significant benefit to Canadians, and the amount of waste produced is small compared to the magnitude of these benefits. Ground contamination is the result of past waste management practices which would not be acceptable under today's standards. The waste that we produce today is carefully packaged and stored in a manner that is protective of the environment. Today's standards are very high and consistent with the highest international standards. The objective of the near-surface disposal facility is to protect the Ottawa River, the groundwater, and the surrounding environment. The facility being proposed is highly engineered and provides a multi-layer protection to isolate the low-level radioactive waste from the environment. The technology for near-surface disposal facilities is mature, well understood, and has been used for decades at other sites. It is designed to contain the materials and prevent damage to the surrounding environment. In the Port Hope area, CNL has already built and is operating 2 such facilities with the same design, and they are both performing as expected. The licensing and environmental assessment processes for this proposed facility continued over the past year with CNSC hearings expected in 2022. And it should be noted that these processes involve the engagement of the public, stakeholders, and Indigenous communities. The bottom line is this. We have a responsibility to remediate the contaminated land and decommission our redundant nuclear facilities. The near-surface disposal facility is a safe and modern solution needed for the long-term management of this material. It will significantly reduce risks to the environment at the Chalk River site. Moving now to the Port Hope Area Initiative. This represents the Government of Canada's commitment to clean up and safely manage historic, low-level radioactive waste located in the municipalities of Port Hope and Clarington in southern Ontario. This is one of the largest environmental remediation projects currently being delivered in Canada. With this project, we are retrieving and transporting more than 2 million cubic meters of historic low-level radioactive waste. That's more than 200,000 trucks of contaminated soil. 2 modern near-surface facilities have been constructed to receive this waste. Despite challenges posed by the pandemic, there has been significant progress made on this in the past year. In Clarington at the Port Granby project, the work is now mostly complete. Remediation has been completed and the waste facility has been capped and closed. This is a significant achievement, one which has only been made possible through collaborative work between AECL, CNL, and the municipality of Clarington. We have effectively remediated low-level radioactive waste, which was located on the shores of Lake Ontario, and we have now placed it in an engineered near-surface facility, just like the one that's being proposed at Chalk River. As part of our commitment to leave a positive legacy, we have been working with local Indigenous communities and the municipality to explore options for the creation of a nature reserve with the lands surrounding the facility. We are committed to finding a positive way forward to co-manage the nature reserve with Indigenous communities in a way that respects their role as stewards of the land. The Port Hope project is more complex as it entails a series of cleanups at industrial sites, other sites in the community, and several hundred residential properties. Much has been learned since the project began regarding the cleanup of these residential properties. For those of you less familiar with the Port Hope Area Initiative, the remediation literally means going into people's homes and backyards to clean up and retrieve low-level historic contamination. The community has raised some concerns about the timeliness of the cleanup and the impact to the built and the natural environments of Port Hope, including the loss of trees. Remediation and construction are taking a long time, and people are frustrated. I want you to know that we understand. That is why CNL has recently proposed changes to the cleanup criteria. The objective is to reduce the unintended impacts of the project, including most notably the long construction timelines to residential properties and the removal of thousands of trees in the community while still being protective of human health and the environment. I would like to acknowledge the support and collaboration we have received from the municipality of Port Hope to help resolve issues impacting the progress of this project. Without their support, we could not move forward. As part of the process, engagement with the local community, Indigenous communities, and other stakeholders has been taking place for about a year. In summary, significant progress has been made in the last 6 years on the Port Hope Area Initiative, and I remain confident that by working together, we will achieve the common goal of completing this important project. The Whiteshell site in Pinawa, Manitoba, is the second largest of AECL sites operated by CNL. The objective at Whiteshell is to remove buildings, remediate any impacted land, and return the vast majority of the site to a state where it can be reused. This involves the decontamination and dismantlement of more than 85 buildings and structures and the removal of all used fuel and other waste materials from the site. Significant progress has been made, including the demolition of 32 buildings and structures, including a contaminated lab complex. The accelerated decommissioning timeline for Whiteshell means that we are now planning to close the site by 2027, which is about 30 years ahead of the previous schedule. This means reducing hazards and protecting the environment sooner, which reduces overall risks. It also means making the site available for future development. CNL has put forward a proposal to decommission the Whiteshell reactor in situ. This means that radioactive materials contained in the reactor, which is located underground, would be immobilized in place to isolate it from the environment. Through scientific studies, CNL is demonstrating that there would be no risks to the public or the environment, including over the long term. This project is currently undergoing an environmental assessment, which requires the approval of the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. CNL and AECL have also been engaging with local stakeholders and Indigenous communities on this and continue to work with them. A complex part of the decommissioning of this site is the removal of waste from old waste storage facilities, which were always meant to be temporary. The retrieval process and processing and packaging of this material is one of the most challenging aspects of this project. In order to ensure the highest level of worker and environmental protection, a purpose-built system is currently being manufactured with deployment expected sometime next year. Finally, we have 3 other important sites. All 3 are shut-down prototype reactors. One of them is just upriver to the Chalk River site, the nuclear power demonstration reactor located in Ralphton, Ontario, which went into service in 1962 and was permanently shut down in 1987. Work done at the NPD over these years has enabled the development and operations of the CANDU fleet, which today provides more than 60% of Ontario's carbon-free electricity and 15% across Canada. CNL has put forward an application to decommission the reactor in situ, which is the same approach being proposed for the WR1 reactor at Whiteshell. The other 2 reactors, Gentilly 1 and Douglas Point, are not at the same stage of decommissioning. And there are no plans to decommission either of them in situ since both are above ground. That said, CNL has put forward plans to start the decommissioning process for the Douglas Point reactor. This is meant to tackle only non-nuclear buildings. Any further decommissioning plans will be developed in the coming years with input from the public, Indigenous communities, and local stakeholders. I talked about a lot of activities for AECL and CNL. Importantly, we are working with local Indigenous communities to build bridges and partnerships in the spirit of reconciliation and healing. We recognize that meaningful relationships take time to establish. We are committed to doing this in a way that brings benefits to all involved. For example, we have agreements and memoranda of understanding in place with some communities, and we are working towards long-term relationship agreements with others. Indigenous peoples are stewards of the land. It is important that we listen and work with them as we undertake our work. In the interest of time, I will wrap it up. Looking ahead, we see both opportunity and challenges. Last year at this time, we were talking about a potential second wave of COVID-19. Today, we are already into the fourth wave. This means that ongoing flexibility and responsiveness will be required to maintain the health and safety of our workforce and our communities. Our new normal may not look like what we anticipate. We have to be ready. We have to be resilient. Ongoing work to support Canada's response to the pandemic is also top of mind, and I know that AECL and CNL are ready to take up the challenge. For example, we're doing work to analyze the dispersion of aerosols to make workplaces safer. Of course, our core work must also continue. This includes scientific work and our environmental remediation activities. We have a responsibility and a commitment to protect the environment. The status quo is simply not sustainable. It's our role to protect the interests of Canada, including environmental concerns. I've talked about SMRs, and looking ahead, we're excited about the possibilities. More than SMRs, we see that Canada has the potential to be at the forefront of low-carbon technology, including hydrogen, and at the forefront of optimizing systems of low-carbon technologies. The vision for a clean energy park at the Chalk River site is born out of the idea that systems of multiple clean energy technologies working together is what it will take to get to net zero. Achieving Canada's climate action and GHG emission reduction goals will be challenging. It will require a diversity of options, existing and emerging ones, and it will require commitment. There's a need to bring to bear all technology options: renewables, nuclear, hydrogen, carbon capture, and more. We need all of them to be successful. This is not a question of renewables versus nuclear. It's a question of using both, and indeed using nuclear alongside renewables in markets where renewables alone are not viable. I'm very proud of the work that AECL does on behalf of Canadians, and I'm very proud of what we are achieving alongside CNL, local and Indigenous communities, and stakeholders across Canada. With that, I'll turn it back over to Rhonda. Thank you, miigwech et merci.
Thank you, Mr. Burpee and Mr. DeMarker, for those presentations. Merci pour vos présentations. We are now joined by three guest speakers, each one the mayor of a community home to part of the AECL family. Nous avons maintenant trois conférenciers invités. Chacun est maire ou mairesse d'une communauté qui est partie de la famille de l'AECL. Our first guest speaker is Sue Dion, mayor of Deep River, the host of the community of the Chalk River Laboratories. The second guest speaker is Blair Skinner, mayor of the municipality of Port Hope, and home to the Port Hope Area Initiative. Our third guest speaker is Bob Sanderson, mayor of the municipality of, Our second guest speaker is Blair Skinner, mayor of Pinawa and the host community of the Whiteshell Laboratories. The third guest speaker is Bob Sanderson, mayor of the municipality of Port Hope and the Port Hope Area Initiative.
Good evening. Thank you for the kind invitation to speak. As a mayor in Ontario, one of my duties under the Municipal Act is to participate in and foster activities that enhance the social, economic, and environmental well-being of the municipality and its residents. I also have a duty to promote the municipality locally, nationally, and internationally. Since 1945, our collective histories, the Chalk River Laboratories and the town of Deep River, have been inextricably linked. And generally, in my opinion, that has been a good thing. Yet never before has it been clearer to me that what is good for Deep River, AECL, and the Chalk River Labs is also very, very good for Ontario, Canada, and the world. I truly view AECL's board and your 50 or so employees as having one of the most important roles in all of government, that being to promote, advocate, and influence policy supporting the use of nuclear energy, nuclear technology, and nuclear medicine within the federal halls of power. Nuclear power has been one of Canada's most reliable, consistent, and clean energy sources for over 50 years. Yet the benefits of nuclear are often not something frequently seen on the web pages of NRCan or Environment and Climate Change Canada. I believe this needs to change, and change quickly, because clearly nuclear is one of the best solutions to decarbonize our world, and it needs to be extolled as such. In the context of humanity's urgent need for way more clean energy and the increasing societal and monetary costs of carbon-emitting fuels, Canadian nuclear energy represents a strong value proposition with grid stability, price stability, 24/7 production, zero CO2 emissions, an exceptional safety record, a strong regulator, good quality jobs, technology leadership, and fuel diversity. AECL supported initiatives such as helping to get northern communities off diesel via SMRs, moving high-efficiency transportation forward with hydrogen, and supporting refurbishment of existing and new reactors are all very important. We must ensure that nuclear is a high-profile part of low-carbon solutions. Your webpage states, quote, AECL is currently developing a long-term strategy to articulate our mission, key priorities, and ambitions for the future. Please make it part of your mission to promote and advocate within government for what nuclear brings to Canada and the world. Canada also needs you to continue to oversee the world-class research site at Chalk River. Not just oversee, but enhance, expand, and improve upon, because the world needs the material science, energy science, the physics, the chemistry, the biology, and the mechanical development. We have never needed more to have a campus where smart people can collaborate and create. Your Crown Corporation creates that environment for success. Some say success happens when preparation meets opportunity. AECL helps with the being prepared part of that formula, and can also help to seek out and create opportunities. You have a key role to open the door and welcome innovation and innovators. But it's not only about the campus and the research, it's also about the people and the results they create, and what these results can do to improve society. It's about the steps to market after research. For example, the decommissioning techniques learned at CRL have high market and social value. The world needs your 50 or so employees to help champion the results and the solutions, continuing to facilitate increased knowledge. Along with climate change, the world has spent a year and a half facing down a global pandemic. Among the many things the COVID pandemic has taught us is that the world needs modern medical solutions. While nuclear has been part of medicine for decades, COVID has shown us how fast disease can fracture a fragile and interconnected world. Your 50 employees have helped open the door to new medical solutions, such as supporting the development of MVM ventilators and alpha therapy. Thank you. The world needs more of these solutions. Please keep them coming. Now let me circle back to my town, Deep River. As a community founded on science and innovation, I would personally like to see Deep River become a municipal sustainability leader and get to net zero within the next 10 years. We need to move more quickly to decarbonize our facilities and operations. We may ask for your guidance and expertise to achieve this. AECL has always been a solid partner with Deep River, and we want to continue with the dialogue and the sharing of ways to achieve mutual goals. And here I will stop speaking and listen. We are all in this together, your 50 employees, my town, and the rest of the world. Collaboration and communication are key. Let's keep that going. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Blair Skinner, the Mayor of the local government district of Pinawa, the proud host community of the Whiteshell Laboratories and AECL-owned CNL managed site. It is my honor to speak at this evening's AECL annual general meeting. I have the privilege to speak from the ancestral lands of the Treaty 1 and Treaty 3 peoples and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. Pinawa is a small community of 1,500 located 100 kilometers northeast of Winnipeg and located on the beautiful Winnipeg River. Pinawa was born in 1963 at the same time as the Whiteshell Laboratories, and so we owe our entire history to the nuclear industry. The Whiteshell Laboratory site is currently being decommissioned, and it is the first decommissioning project of this magnitude in Canada. Pinawanians are very proud of our nuclear heritage and very much want it to be part of Pinawa's future. Our work towards hosting one or more small modular reactor demonstrations has continued and is accelerating, particularly very small modular reactors suitable for providing power to a remote off-grid community and remote mining site. Small modular reactors will be able to provide power at 3 to 5 times lower cost than diesel-generated power and virtually eliminate greenhouse gas emissions. In addition, our site has the capacity to connect to the Manitoba Hydro grid on existing infrastructure. This will enable Pinawa to become the demonstration remote community powered by an SMR. In addition, our comprehensive demonstration will show how a remote off-grid community will be able to affordably grow fresh fruit and vegetables year-round, along with many other quality of life improvements. We will also include demonstration on integrating SMR power with renewable sources of energy. Visitors from a remote off-grid community will be able to come to Pinawa and see an SMR operating safely, reliably, greenhouse gas-free, and cost-effectively, and powering a small community just like theirs. They will also be able to see all the ways their quality of life will be improved. It is very exciting that Starcore Nuclear has formally proposed to CNL to build their demonstration SMR at the Whiteshell Laboratory site. They chose our site based on Pinawa's vision for showing how remote communities and mining organizations how safe, reliable, cost-effective power can be delivered while making very significant improvements to quality of life. During the last year, we have been continuing to build an impressive array of partnerships to ensure the benefits are shared by as many people and organizations as possible. The relationships we have been building include our local First Nations communities and the Manitoba Métis Federation, 10 municipalities, University of Manitoba, trade organizations, an Ontario Mining Corporation organization, and we even have a letter of support from the Republic of Indonesia. Many of our letters of support include specific commitments to education, training, and job creation for our local Indigenous people. A very important step forward has been taken earlier this year. The Manitoba Provincial Minister for Crown Services, who is responsible for Manitoba Hydro, has written to Starcore Nuclear and authorized Starcore Nuclear to explore connecting the demonstration SMR to the Manitoba Hydro grid and to discuss a power purchase agreement. So we have a fantastic site for a demonstration SMR, willing host communities, a vision to change people's lives for the better, a committed vendor, a network of supporting people and organizations, and now the province of Manitoba has formally enabled the process to move forward. And now the real work begins. We very much appreciate AECL's and CNL's support for our vision. Thanks again for the opportunity to speak at the 2021 AECL Annual General Meeting.
Hello, I'm Bob Sanderson, Mayor of the Municipality of Port Hope, and it's my pleasure to offer a few short words on behalf of Council and our community about the Port Hope Area Initiative project that is being done here. The project is now in year 3 of active construction and waste disposal. This project is also a unique project in that it is entirely immersed in the community. The construction and remediation affect the daily lives of our residents. It takes place on our residential properties, in our neighborhoods, and throughout our community spaces. While the project construction causes disruption at times for our residents, we are seeing some positive results from the work being done at various sites around town. We're pleased to know that soon 2 of our municipal properties will be completed and available to the municipality. Both properties are along our waterfront, an area of extreme importance to our municipality. As a municipality, we're celebrating these successes and looking forward to reimagining the spaces as we build them into our upcoming waterfront and Riverwalk master plan. AECL and CNL continue to work collaboratively with the municipality to strengthen relationships with the community and our stakeholders as the project progresses. The project has created some challenges from an environmental and social perspective. We're collectively reflecting on the possibility that some modifications could be made to minimize a negative environmental impact to potentially losing up to 50,000 trees under the current cleanup criteria. We have been encouraging our residents and our stakeholders to speak up and share their feedback on the project. We have a shared desire with AECL and CNL to achieve the best possible outcomes for our community, while still recognizing property owners' input and feedback from our taxpayers. We appreciate that CNL regularly keeps council and the community informed of the project activities, challenges, and opportunities for the project completion. As the cleanup continues, I anticipate a sustained working relationship with AECL and CNL, and that we will continue to address our community impacts with a collaborative approach, keeping the best interest of Port Hope at heart. Thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to share a few remarks with you today, and I look forward to celebrating the continued completion of projects in the months and years to come. Thank you again.
Thank you to our three mayors for their inspiring comments. This now concludes the formal presentation portion of this evening, and we move to the question and answer period. While we wait for those questions to come in, I will remind everyone in the audience that you have two ways to submit your questions. You may do so via the video cast or by email to communications@aecl.ca. We will do our best to answer all the questions you submit this evening, but in the event we do not make it through all the questions, you can expect a written response to your question in the days that follow. Nous avons maintenant terminé les présentations ce soir.
That was the formal presentations. We are now moving to your questions. You can submit your question through the webcast, but also by email at communications@aecl.ca.
Our first question is for Fred. Climate change is a real problem that we need to tackle now, yet small modular reactors' timelines still seem far away. What is AECL doing to advance SMR deployment?
Thank you for that. We share the sentiment that climate change is a very pressing issue. However, the idea that SMRs are a long way away is something that is, I would say, debatable. We are making some significant progress in terms of advancing SMRs. And I would like to hand this over to Steve Bushby, who's the acting VP for Science and Technology and has the lead on the SMR program for AECL.
Great, thanks very much, Fred. I think when it comes to SMRs, there's a number of things that AECL is doing. I think Fred mentioned in his opening remarks that the Fed S&T program, or the Federal Nuclear Science and Technology program, that looks at a bunch of different energy technologies, including, of course, SMRs. And so there's a fairly substantial investment that goes under the Federal Nuclear Science and Technology program. There's also, as Fred mentioned, the Canadian Nuclear Research Initiative. And this is an initiative by which proponents for SMRs can come and work with the Chalk River Laboratories using the facilities and the capabilities that are there to develop their technologies. And the final piece, and this is with regard to, as Fred mentioned, demonstration is going to be critical for any of these SMR technologies. And so CNL has initiated this invitation for demonstration process by which a technology vendor or a proponent can come to the labs and actually demonstrate their technology on an existing site, and also take capabilities and the expertise that exists at the site in order to develop the technology.
Our second question is again for Fred. Mayor Skinner from Pinawa, in his opening remarks, referred to possible deployment of SMRs, or small modular reactors, at Whiteshell. Do you want to speak further to plans for an SMR at Whiteshell?
Well, I'll hand it over to Steve again, having the lead on SMRs.
Yeah, thanks very much. So the process that I just talked about, the invitation for demonstration process, there have been 4 different proponents that have looked at, that have submitted, And one of the proponents, as Mayor Skinner talked about, was Starcore Energy. And they are currently engaging local stakeholders at the potential of building their high-temperature gas reactor at the White Shell site.
Thank you. Our third question, I believe, is for Fred, but perhaps also for Steve.
Actually, if I could just add to what Steve said, in my view, what will make SMRs a success is having willing investors. And what's really exciting about the Starcore project, I mean, there's all the science aspects and it's all really cool. But what's unique about the Starcore project is they have investors. And when you have investors, you have obviously money. And when you have money, it gets everything going. So we have the site. And Starcore has investors, and I think it creates for a very exciting opportunity.
Wonderful. So our third question for Fred or Steve equally. The Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, the CNSC, is currently conducting pre-licensing vendor design reviews, or VDRs, for about a dozen SMR vendor designs, but is not examining their potential for radioactive waste. Most SMRs will also be exempted from impact assessments if less than 200 megawatts, and their waste would be allowed to be left in situ. The population is worried about this issue. What is the position of AECL regarding SMR radioactive waste management?
So I'll start and then hand it off to Steve. I want to note the waste question is an important question. But the one thing that really distinguishes nuclear in terms of managing its waste is that nuclear actually accounts for all its waste and develops programs to deal with it, which is exactly what we're doing right now. In fact, the reason that we're dealing with legacy waste right now is because we were managing this waste, we were storing it. The same will be done for SMRs. Canada has Canada's radioactive waste policy framework requires the owner of the SMR to be the owner of the waste and to have long-term plans for that waste. And I'll hand it over to Steve to provide some additional context regarding how this is being handled.
Yeah, thanks, Fred. A couple points just before I get into it. I think there was, just to clarify a couple of things. One was with regard to the vendor design review. The vendor design review was established by the CNSC as a pre-licensing review for the CNSC to take a look at the technologies and to establish whether, to do sort of a first assessment, to see whether there are gaps or, things that need to be developed as the technology vendor is going forward. So to that extent, it has been, I think, probably predominantly around the technology, but certainly as part of the vendor design review, it's important that they do look at waste, and the CNSC is asking questions about what kind of waste is going to be developed, the waste management plans, all those sorts of things. But I think what's critical as part of this is that it's a pre-licensing aspect. It's not licensing. And so anything that is going to be built in this country is going to have to go through the very rigorous licensing process that is existing by the CNSC. And as part of that, there's going to have to be a robust waste management plan for dealing with any of the types of waste that exist, either high-level fuel waste, but certainly integrated, all other types of waste that would be part of that. There was the question, I think, about in situ disposal, and I think it's pretty clear that in situ is an opportunity for existing facilities, but is not something that is contemplated for any future nuclear facility. And in fact, I just go back to again, any sort of licensing process here is going to take. It will need to understand, and anybody who is going to propose one of these things is going to have to deal responsibly with that waste question. Back to, the question, I guess, in terms of, what's AECL's position on this. I mean, AECL, this is, I think, one of the most critical things that we're going to have to understand in terms of the development of the SMRs. And the country recognizes this, and we have the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, by mandate, has to be responsible for taking any of the nuclear fuel wastes. But they've also been charged with taking a look at an integrated waste strategy. And so any of the waste that come from any type of SMR is going to have to be factored into all part of this. So I think that there is within Canada some very robust frameworks for dealing with SMR wastes, and I'm confident that we will manage them responsibly.
Thank you. Our next question is for Fred. Turning to the subject of waste management, there is still no plan for intermediate level waste management, and their inventory has been modified for mysterious reasons. What is the intention of AECL in this year regarding the management of intermediate waste?
So it's really two questions. Let me deal with the second part first, the so-called mysterious reasons part of the question. So when our sites have been around since the 1940s, and as we've talked about, the work that was done at these sites that generated the waste had tremendous benefit to Canada, and we can't lose sight of that. So I will repeat that several times because it has had such benefit. In addition to that, we kept track of the waste. We didn't just throw it out, we kept track of it. Now, the way we kept track of it, the past record keeping, it was appropriate for the standards of the day, but the standards at the time, in the 1940s and the 1950s, they were not the standards of today. So what we do now in terms of characterizing the waste and accounting for the inventories is far more rigorous. As a result, all we have at this point is a limited, for the wastes that were generated in the 40s, 50s, 60s, we have a limited understanding of what's there. And as we get into it, we're able to, and we start to characterize, to sort it, to segregate it, to store it, we get a much better understanding of what's there. And that's why the inventories appear to change. It's really reflecting a higher level of understanding, especially around the older wastes and waste inventories. The second part of the question is, what are we going to do with it? Well, first of all, let me put into perspective. More than 98% of our waste is low-level waste. That is right now our top priority. The near-surface disposal facility, the licensing of that facility, the construction of that facility, and moving the 98% of our waste into that facility is our highest priority. The intermediate level waste, which is about half a percent of our inventory, give or take, is what we're doing right now. As I indicated that we are characterizing it, segregating it, sorting it, and storing it. We're putting it into these state-of-the-art storage containers that are able to hold the wastes until we have a long-term solution. So we're in the process of doing that, of putting all the intermediate level waste into these storage containers, and then when we have a final disposal solution, we'll be moving them into that disposal.
Thank you, Fred. I believe our next question is for Steve. And the question reads, is there any research on large-scale Generation 4 reactors or improvements to CANDU design?
So with regard to large-scale CANDU design, certainly one of the things that we do look at with our Fed S&T program are sort of evolutions and making sure that as we go forward in Canada with new reactor designs, things like Generation 4 reactors. So Canada has been a member of the Generation 4 International Forum now since its inception back in 2004. And so we currently are leading on the supercritical water reactor, and we also are heavily involved more recently in the very high temperature reactor as well as the molten salt reactor. So we, within our federal nuclear science and technology program, are making investments both from a technology side. So we have built facilities, we have grown expertise to allow Canadian companies to come in and evolve their technologies to take them through to fruition at Chalk River. With regard to, advancing the can-do design, I think folks are aware that back in 2011, there was the divestiture of the reactor business that went to SNC-Lavalin. SNC-Lavalin has responsibility overall for for developing and taking forward the can-do design, but certainly it is underpinned by the expertise and the facilities that exist at the Chalk River site.
Thank you very much. For our next question, perhaps we'll go back to Fred, and Steve, if you'd like to add anything after. The question reads, does AECL have plans for a new research reactor?
So the research reactor, the NRU reactor that operated for about 60 years, contributed tremendously to the advancement of nuclear science, material science here in Canada, and I want to make sure to mention for those in the audience that are watching that we actually have that reactor, that research reactor, helped to get Canada two Nobel Prizes in the area of materials research. The Nobel laureates did their foundational work at the Chalk River Labs using the NRU reactor. So all this is to say, research reactors are a very important part of a national science and technology program. Now, with respect to specific plans for what we're planning to do with the lab, I'll turn it over to the acting VP of Science and Technology.
Thanks, Fred. So yes, as Fred said, those of us who have been involved in the industry, you've been touched by the work that has been going on or had gone on for years at the Chalk River site and NRU and NRX. But of course, in Canada, we also have the McMaster nuclear reactor, and you'll have just noticed recently that the Slowpoke reactor was refueled at RMC, which now sets them up for training students and engineers again for another 30 years. So it's an important development. It's recognized that, for a lot of the work that we're doing on developing of new SMRs, there are going to have to be irradiation facilities. And in that regard, certainly CNL is looking at how they might do that type of work going forward. And so they're currently in discussions with different reactors around the world where they can actually do that sort of testing. But in parallel with that, over the last number of months, CNL has led a number of different workshops trying to sort out what might be the needs for a research reactor. And so this is actually being driven by the end users. It's not CNL coming forward and saying, hey, we're going to do the following things. It's taking a look at the end users as to what can actually be done with a new research reactor. And it's not just about what can be done for developing the nuclear technologies. There are so many advancements in things that like neutron scattering and the like that are really incredible opportunities. And so as part of these workshops, it's to put this together, and it's being assimilated right now. And so although, as Fred said, there are no immediate plans for a research reactor, the idea is to use the findings from these workshops to inform any future decisions that might be taken on building a new research reactor within the country.
Thank you both. Our next question is to Fred. Can you speak further to the status of the ongoing waste disposal projects, near-surface disposal facility, the nuclear power demonstration project, and white shell decommissioning?
It's a very vague question. Can I speak further? It's very open-ended. I'm sorry. I'm not sure where to begin. Because I've in my presentation I already covered a lot of the material, so unless there's something more specific, I'll stay with that.
Okay. Well, we've got a couple more questions, so let's move on, and perhaps we can seek clarification from the individual who submitted that one. So I will go back to Fred and to Steve for the next question. There is a long and proud history in the production of medical isotopes at Chalk River, yet the Maples are sitting idle and the NRU has been shut down. Are there plans to produce medical isotopes in the future?
Thank you for that. As I mentioned in my presentation, AECL is very focused on both developing the technology and developing the production capacity for actinium-225. And we see actinium-225 as a very exciting development in the medical community and in the radioisotope community. Some of the tests that have been done have really yielded remarkable results, because the actinium is able to target the tumor and really target it. I mean, when they talk about targeted alpha therapy, it really targets the tumor without with very little damage to the surrounding healthy cells. So we are looking, we're pursuing, working with private investors on this, as well as with other technology providers that we can work with to bring this to market. And Steve has been working much more closely on this. And I'll hand it to Steve to talk about in a little bit more detail what we're doing with targeted alpha therapy.
Yeah, thanks, Fred. Yeah, I mean, as Fred said, I don't think there's many things that some of us have worked on over the last little while that has brought as much excitement about what we can actually do with nuclear technology in this. And on the actinium-225 project, as Fred said, we're working with a bunch of different organizations and how we can bring this forward. And CNL is absolutely perfectly positioned for developing this, with having the facilities, having the expertise that exists from dealing with radioisotopes prior, but also the technologies associated with linear accelerators or cyclotrons and the like. So certainly the prospects are there, and we're working diligently to try to bring this to Canadians and to the world. I think the other part of the question was around the maples. The actinium-225 is best produced with a cyclotron, not a reactor. And so, in terms of the actual maple reactors, which were developed for a different reason, a different isotope called Moly-99, when that project ended, there were facilities, there has been a fair number of studies as to how those could be repurposed, and the determination was that they're best not to be repurposed, and we're currently looking at how can we decommission the facilities.
Thank you both. For our next question, I'd like to shift tracks a little bit and think about Canada's future. And the question reads as follows. Perhaps we'll start with Fred. Last week, the federal government marked the first National Truth and Reconciliation Day for Canada. Can AECL speak to its commitment to reconciliation and healing with Indigenous groups?
Yes, thank you for that. Certainly, the whole issue of reconciliation, working with Indigenous communities, and helping to advance the healing process has been a key area of focus for us, for me in particular, but also for my organization. We're working towards developing, in fact, we have some MOUs in place with some communities. We're working towards long-term relationship agreements. And this word, we use the words long-term relationship agreement. This is really a substantive it is very substantive, because it redefines how we work together so that we can ensure that all sides are getting mutual benefit from the collaboration. And maybe I'll hand it over to Maud Paget, who has been taking the lead and making some really significant, taking us some significant strides forward in terms of building our relationship with Indigenous communities.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Fred. As Fred noted, certainly we have a strong commitment to reconciliation, and part of our work towards that and in implementing the calls to actions from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission is about building meaningful relationships. So some of that takes the form of enacting some of these calls to action, like providing training on cultural awareness to staff, but a lot of our work actually has to do building these relationships with Indigenous communities that are on which traditional territories we operate. So we have been working for a few years now with some of these communities, sometimes alongside CNL, and I know that the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission also does a lot of work to build relationships. And we recognize that building relationships and building trusts takes a lot of time. Some of the work that we do involves providing capacity funding for Indigenous communities to engage and be able to meaningfully participate in some of our activities. In some cases, Fred mentioned in his presentation, we have memorandums of understanding, and in other cases, we're working on long-term relationship agreement. Part of the work on our side is about listening, learning, and integrating traditional knowledge in some of our activities, and really looking at how can we bring Western science, how can we bring traditional Indigenous knowledge into Western science and do things in a way that makes sense and that's meaningful for both Indigenous communities, but also ourselves and our scientists. And we are learning along the way. So examples of that is work that we in CNL are doing on environmental monitoring. So bringing Indigenous communities and representatives on site to do their own environmental monitoring. And looking at the totality of our activities at our sites. So it's not just about a particular project, but what are we doing now and into the future, and finding ways to find common objectives. At the end of the day, we have common goals of protecting the environment, and it's really about finding ways of working together to achieve something that's meaningful for both partners.
Thank you, Maude. The next question I will direct to Fred. The Port Hope Area Initiative is planning on cutting down mature trees in Port Hope. This is not only terrible from an environmental perspective, but it will also dramatically change the look of the established neighborhood and risks affecting property values. Something needs to be done to prevent this from occurring. What is AECL doing to help finally clean up Port Hope?
Thank you for that question. I understand that this issue is very close to people's hearts. As I mentioned in the presentation, we are literally working in people's backyards, and this is a very, very unique project in that regard. I know it's disruptive to the community, and I know it's important to save trees. With that in mind, what we have been doing is working with CNL to look at the potential for changing cleanup criteria. And Mayor Sanderson alluded to that in his talk as well, in his video. It's by revisiting the cleanup criteria. What we're looking to do is ask the question, is there an opportunity to relax the criteria so that we reduce the scope of disruption, including the number of trees being cut down, without while still assuring the protection of the environment and protection of people? It's a balancing act. On the one hand, some would want us to go down to zero and below background levels, but on the other hand, the cost is a very large amount of disruption to the community. So we're looking to see where is that balance, and we're working with key organizations, the Ministry for Environment, Conservation and Parks in Ontario, Health Canada, of course the community, and all of this information is going to be reviewed by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, because it's ultimately them that will be deciding on the acceptability of the revision of the cleanup criterion. But that is one of the biggest things that we can do to help minimize the impact to the community.
Thank you. Our next question is about the COVID-19 pandemic. We are conducting, AECL is conducting this meeting again virtually due to the ongoing pandemic. Could you speak to your response to the COVID-19 pandemic and lessons learned for AECL? Perhaps elaborate on some of the comments you made already.
So we can talk. Thank you for the question. We can talk about this at various levels. We can talk about it at the AECL level. We can talk about it at the CNL level because AECL oversees CNL's response, and we can talk about it at the level of what has CNL done to actually advance Canada in its fight against the pandemic. And let me start with the third one first, and then we can work our way back up to the first one. Jim mentioned it in his remarks. I mentioned it in mine. We're both immensely proud of the contribution that CNL made working alongside Triumph and Snow Lab to develop a ventilator. And this was a real contribution. In fact, we developed, as a result of the work that was done by these organizations, we were able to develop, I believe, well, it was thousands of ventilators. I was going to quote a certain number of thousands. I'm not positive. I think it was in the range of 10,000 ventilators, but it was a very substantial contribution to the Government of Canada. And then those ventilators are available to the Government of Canada to use as it chooses. Very recently, just switching gears to another example, I talked about CNL's capabilities in with respect to hydrogen. And very recently, I was doing a tour of the hydrogen labs together with Steve Burpee. And one of the researchers was showing us work that he was doing to look at aerosol dispersion, to better understand how a virus in the form of an aerosol can hang in the air and what can be done to improve the ventilation to allow the dispersion of that virus so it doesn't concentrate. So these are things that are being done at the lab that have a very tangible impact on Canada's ability to respond to the pandemic. Now, at CNL is a large site. It has altogether over 3,000 employees. I'm very proud of what they were able to do because a very large portion of their work program, they were able to keep going. We talked about the advances that were made at Port Hope over the last year, the advances that were made in remediation of the Chalk River site, and the continued work in the Science and Technology program. And they did this by implementing very rigorous controls around masking, distancing, cleansing, screening, contact tracing, and did an absolutely fabulous job in ensuring that the likelihood of bringing contagion to the site was very low. The likelihood of spread within the site was very low, and should a spread occur, the ability to respond to that spread and contain it through contact tracing was very low. And they were very successful. And as a result of that success, they were able to execute a large portion of the work program that they had planned to do before the pandemic. Now, at the AECL level, I'm very proud of how AECL responded. They had already responded by the time I arrived on site, but what they had done was they pivoted very, very quickly to have people work at home. But with safety being top of mind, they didn't only have people work at home, they set them up with ergonomic workstations. And they had an ergonomist remotely help people set up their ergonomic workstations. I know this because when I joined AECL in February, when the pandemic was roaring, that's exactly what they did for me. And they treated me like they treated everybody else. They set me up with all the equipment, and the person who did it is actually in the other room right next door, and he's helping us with this video right now. Jeff Newhook, I'll give him a shout out because I think they did an outstanding job in helping the organization pivot that way. But the other part that they did was we not only helped people to work from home, but one of the things that happens when you work from home is there's a tremendous amount of mental stress that goes with that. You've lost the connections to your coworkers, you've lost your connections to your family and friends. And what AECL did through its human resources organization is it really upped the gain on the mental wellness portion of, and it brought in programs to help employees deal with mental stress. So these are, we could go on talking about this, but these are a few things that were done. What I'd like to do, I've done all the talking, and I'd like to really hand this off to people who lived it, because I joined it late, so I saw it when a lot of this had already happened. So I'd like to start off with Maud, and then I'd like to invite Jim after that as the chair, because the board was very involved in all this as well. So first we'll start with Maud from a worker perspective, and then I'd like to go to Jim from an overview perspective.
Thanks, Fred. I think you've certainly covered it quite well from the worker perspective. We at AECL were able to work from home, and we're well accommodated in that space, including resources in mental health. I would say as an employee, what struck me the most is not how I was personally accommodated, but the work that CNL and the labs were able to do in helping the community and helping the national effort. Fred spoke about the ventilator project. CNL also did a lot of work to donate personal protective equipment in the local community, certainly early on in the pandemic when there were shortages of equipment. And in the recent months through the winter, they've worked with local health authorities to help with vaccine clinics and flu clinics throughout the last winter months as well. So that's really what struck me beyond my personal experience as an employee.
Okay. I guess the big picture, the pandemic was declared in the middle of March 2020. AECL's planning cycle, the new year starts April 1st, 2020 in this case, and all our plans in the period of a couple of weeks are thrown out the window. Complete disruption, and tremendous uncertainty of not knowing what can be done. CNL had to go back just to the minimum compliant site for safety and security. But we had to reconfigure our processes for monitoring what work we expected CNL to do and how to recover, how to monitor it, how to judge it and assess it. And that was done by the AECL team over the period of, I guess, a month and a half. And it was just amazing what they did in the cooperation of CNL to make it happen. I mean, that's the work before Fred's time. And I think from the board's perspective, when you look back at how they accommodated that and managed it, the responsiveness of CNL, it was truly impressive. And, you know, probably from a board perspective, we thought this really could have been a disaster, but it wasn't, because a lot of the work got done. Work that was put off is getting done now and managed. And it was just such a great collaborative effort across all of AECL and with CNL. And one other thing that Fred has mentioned, the other thing, an overriding concern of the board at every meeting really was the health of employees, especially the mental health employees, the stress and strain of working remotely. You know, something everyone was getting used to and addressing, so understood that it was a real one, and some really good programs were put in place. But at the end, you know, from the time the pandemic was declared, for a while there, as a board, we were touching base with management once a week until started to get our hands around it, and now it's quote what everyone says, the new normal. But it was quite a tumultuous time, but the AECL team was just fantastic.
Thanks, Jim.
Well, thank you all for the very heartwarming response to that question. It's wonderful to hear that staff came first. Ladies and gentlemen, we've run a little over time. It's now 8:42, so the next question will be our last one. Mesdames et messieurs, comme c'est déjà 8h43, la prochaine question sera le dernier.
Given the time, this is the last question.
It's for you, the last question. It's a two-part question. The first is there anything else you would like to speak on regarding the progress that has been made since the implementation of the government-owned contractor-operated, or GoCO model, or anything that you were hoping someone would ask you about that did not come up already?
Oh, okay. Well, what I'd like to say, I'll offer some personal reflections on the GoCO model. Maybe that's the best way to approach this. When I came into this role, I did not have a full appreciation of the GoCO model. Although I've been working in the industry a very long time, the GoCO model was something new. It was something new for Canada, and when it was initially implemented, I was working at the Can-Do Owners Group at the time. AECL was one of our biggest members. I was half our work we executed at CNL, and I was really concerned about what the implications might be. It was something new. We were carrying it as a risk. In fact, the success of the GoCO model we were carrying as a risk. And honestly, I've been very impressed. The performance of AECL and what it has been doing, AECL and CNL collectively since the inception of the GoCO model is very impressive. They've been able to accelerate the environmental remediation, and they've been able to refocus the labs and make and help them to become more commercially oriented, which is exactly what we were hoping for. Now, you may ask, well, what's different? And the thing that I didn't appreciate is the power of the GoCO model, and I appreciate it now. The power of the GoCO model is in its ability to reach back and grab resources, world-class resources, from the parent companies when they are needed. And the term used for that is very simply reach back. So reach back is a very powerful feature of the GoCO model because it gives you access to this expertise, to a very deep and broad pool of expertise that a single organization by itself cannot have. And I believe coming into this with a fresh perspective, I've been very impressed by what it is able to accomplish. So that's what I would comment on with respect to the GoCO model. Now, the other part of the question, was I hoping to be asked something that I wasn't asked? That's an interesting question. We're out of time, so I don't have anything profound to offer in that regard, and I don't want to waste time if I don't have anything profound to offer. So I'll leave it at that with a high note on the value that the GoCO model has brought.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a nice note to end on. Ladies and gentlemen, we've now come to the end of the annual meeting for 2021. Mesdames et messieurs, nous arrivons maintenant à la fin de notre réunion. On behalf of the staff and the board at AECL, thank you for joining us this evening. Merci, mesdames et messieurs, au nom du personnel.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of EACL, thank you for joining us.